Let's Talk Small Business, the real talk, no BS podcast for business owners and entrepreneurs who want to grow and actually enjoy the ride. I'm Mitchell Wilson. Let's get into it. Today's guest, Bobby Casey, embarked on his entrepreneurial journey at just 19 years old. And over the years, he's built, bought, and sold companies in diverse industries, including real estate, restaurants, cryptocurrency, mining, and consulting. Now, these experiences have exposed him to the complexities of managing business compliance, taxes, and operations. Challenges every entrepreneur faces. So, if you're building a business and want it to last, you will want to hear this. Bobby, let's talk small business.
All right, Mitchell, thanks for having me on. Let's do it. Let's talk about small business.
Yeah, cool. So, first of all, I've got it right in front of me, so I might as well ask, businessanywhere.io, what are we talking about here?
So, basically, businessanywhere.io is an offshoot of my consulting practice I've been doing for 25 years, I guess now, since 2001. In that consulting practice, I work with location-independent entrepreneurs and investors who predominantly live outside their home country or have business outside their home country. And over the years, I had recommended people to do different things, like set up your company here, or get a virtual mailbox here, or register, set up a trust here, or whatever. And basically, Business Anywhere is a spinoff of that because, and I jokingly say this, but you know, there's always an element of truth to every joke, is Business Anywhere got started out of my own pure laziness, because we had registered so many U.S. companies for clients over the years, and it's so tedious to deal with all the compliance aspects, like renewing them every year, filing the annual reports, paying a franchise tax, all these things that got to be so tedious. And I got tired of doing it, and so I hired a developer to build me a software application to automate that whole process a few years ago. And when we built it out, I thought, actually, that would be a pretty cool business all by itself. And so that's how Business Anywhere got started, is I spun that off from my consulting practice. It was originally a tool for my consulting practice, but I spun it off as its own business. Yeah, and so now we're basically like a all-in-one platform for startups. We're US-based. And the reason we're US-based is it all started because of my consulting dealing with like digital nomad type people. Is the vast majority of, and I say the vast majority, like really probably in my experience, like 95% of people that are living this digital nomad life, it's better for them to register their company in the US, regardless of which country they're from. It doesn't matter. You could be Finnish, German, Chinese, Australian. It doesn't matter. If you are living outside your home country, in most cases, a U.S. entity is going to be the easiest for you to deal with. We can go into all kind of details on that if you want. It just is. And so that's why I started Business Anywhere, because that's what all of my clients needed.
Okay. So today, we use that word digital nomad. I'm just trying to, and everyone listening to this would have heard that and know what that would be. Someone just working from anywhere. I'm just trying to think back, though. When did this become mainstream and the possibility? Can you think back?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what the trigger for that was. Yeah, I've talked about this a bunch. I love that you bring this up. So 2004, a couple of Estonian guys created a little thing called Skype.
Yes.
Yep, and we've all heard about it, and we're sitting here on this video platform, which would never have happened if these Estonian guys didn't create Skype 20 plus years ago. So prior to Skype, it wasn't very practical for most small business owners, freelancers, solopreneurs, whatever. It wasn't practical to just grab your laptop and, go sit on the beach in Bali and do your work, or go to some cafe in Mexico City and do your work, because you had to communicate with your clients and you had to talk to them. And I remember back in, I want to say it was 2005 or 6 or something like that, I went to Russia for a few weeks, visiting a friend, doing this adventure tour trip. But I had to maintain communication back with my office and stuff like that. And I came home and my cell phone bill was like $2,000 US dollars. It was like $2,000. And it wasn't that much. It wasn't like I was just lightly chatting, like, hey, how's your day? How's it going? Not like that. It was like straight to the point conversations because it's expensive. Mm-hmm. And I came home and it was like a $2,000 bill. That's not practical for most small business people to have a $2,000 a month cell phone bill. You're not making that kind of money. And so when Skype came along, it opened up that world of cheap or free communication for people. So now you can, like, oh my God, I've got a client halfway around the world. We can get on Skype and have our video calls, phone calls. We can even text each other on Skype, fast communication.
The mere fact today that I'm in New Zealand at the moment and you're in Mexico and we're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was not possible in 2003, right? Like, there was no such thing as a video chat before Skype, and at least not that I'm aware of. And then also there was a book that came out. I bet money you've read it, The 4-Hour Work Week. It came out just at 2005 or 6 or something like that. And Tim Ferriss talked about, grabbing your laptop and working remotely and talking to your clients on Skype and email and outsourcing to VAs and all this stuff. So right around 2004, 5, 6 years, I think is the catalyst for the digital nomad movement. And then we can fast forward until, our glorious COVID era, right? Mm-hmm. And, I'm not kidding when I say this. I wrote a blog post a few years ago saying that COVID was the best thing to happen to humanity. Like, I wrote this big blog post. It got a lot of attention. Mm-hmm. And I went on some podcasts talking about this. Mitchell, I got death threats for...
just listening to the title there, I see why, which is really good attention grabbing, but I also understand where you're coming from.
I got death threats.
The death part, but the other part, I'm sure it's good.
I got death threats. People are like, I can't believe you would say that. My grandma died. You're such an asshole. I can't believe you would say that. F you. If you ever come into my hometown, I'm going to kill you. I mean, like, seriously, I got death threats for probably 6 months after that.
The podcast, Death Threats and Taxes. Yeah.
Well, but my idea behind COVID being the best thing to happen to humanity is now you got big companies saying, hey, we don't need you to come into the office. You guys can work from home. Like, because it was required, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of the government regulations said, hey, you can't, drink coffee together, or whatever this bullshit said. And so now you got all these people working from home. You've got all these entrepreneurs that have their businesses. They don't even have offices anymore. Everyone's working from home. And now you got people thinking, man, this is pretty cool. I can work from home. I like this. I can go have a long lunch with my kids at school, or I can work in my pajamas, or I'm so much more productive working at home. I don't have to go to these endless meetings that get nothing done. I don't have to commute an hour each way to work. I'm not putting all these extra miles on my car. And then the progression to that is, if I can work from home here in whatever, Frankfurt, Germany, or Vancouver, British Columbia, if I can work from home here, man, why don't I work from home at the beach? Why don't I work from home? I really like to go snowboarding. Why don't I go rent a house for a month in Switzerland and go snowboarding this summer? And so this became, in my opinion, this is where the digital nomad movement kind of started going exponential.
Yeah, right.
Is during COVID.
So that was probably, do we call it a mindset shift in the world?
Yeah, well, it was like a mindset. Everybody wanted to work from home, but nobody was allowed to, and nobody thought it was possible. But COVID kind of showed us, that's not only is it possible, but you can be more productive, you can get more done, you have a nicer quality of life, you spend less money on commuting. I mean, there's so many ripple effects that happen to that. Even you think about your car that you use to commute to work. What if you don't commute to work? Do you even need a car? I can have groceries delivered in pretty much every major place in the world now. What if I live downtown and I just go for a walk? What if my gym is 2 blocks away? Like, do I even need a car? Do I need to be burning up miles? What if I was putting, 50,000 miles a year on my car, and now I put 6,000 miles a year on my car? I don't need to buy a car every 3 years. There's all kinds of ripple effects that happen from this, in my opinion.
Okay, so let's get some of this expertise out of you, Bobby. Like, one of the word that comes to mind, and this is sort of probably going a bit too deep to start off with, but offshore.
I love it.
Why does the word offshore scare people? Because what I'm thinking in my mind is the Wolf of Wall Street taking money over to the wherever he was in his big boat, crashing down. We're talking taxes. I'm talking only thinking that the biggest international companies and the rich think about this kind of stuff. So what's the first smart conversation maybe a 500 to 2 mil business owner should have? Like, what are we talking about here?
So first of all, if you're in the 500K to 2 mil range, ultimately what really matters is you as the owner. Where do you live? Where do you physically base yourself? Because governments around the world have figured out that, like, for a long time, you mentioned offshore, like the negative connotation with the concept of offshore. Because used to, like, you could register an offshore company in some Caribbean island, which, by the way, full disclosure, I own a trust and corporate service company in the Caribbean. So that's one of my other companies. So I'm very pro offshore, but for specific reasons. You don't just, like, if I'm starting an e-commerce store selling, let's say, children's clothes on Amazon, registering a company in Cayman does not get you what you need. Like, it's not going to get you, it's going to create more problems than it's worth if that's what you're doing. But if you're in that 500 to 2 mil range in your business, the most important thing is, where are you based? Because countries have figured out they have a hard time controlling things at the company level. So most countries now have enacted what's called CFC regulations, controlled foreign corporation regulations. Mm-hmm. And so, like, Mitchell, if you're living in New Zealand and you go register a company in, I don't know, what's near you, Cook Islands, for example, and you think, I'm just going to run this thing through Cook Islands and not pay any tax because Cook Islands doesn't have any corporate tax. Well, the problem is New Zealand has controlled foreign corporation rules that say if you have control over that Cook Island company, but you are a tax resident of New Zealand, then you have to pay tax on the income of that company as the shareholder of that company, whether you distribute that profit out to you yourself or not. So in other words, used to, let's say 10, 15, 20 years ago, in that example, New Zealander could have a company in Cook Islands. Let's say it made $1 million a year, but you only pay yourself a salary of, let's say, $100K. You would only have to pay tax on the $100K because that was your personal income in New Zealand. But CFC rules have kind of killed that. If you do the same thing now, company makes $1 million, but you only pay yourself $100. In New Zealand, you're still going to owe tax on the $1 million, whether you distribute it out or not.
Right. Okay.
Now, there are some exceptions to that. Like, let's say you opened a company in Cook Islands and you had an office there, and you have like an admin staff or a call center, and you have like an actual purpose for being in the jurisdiction where the company is registered. That changes the rules. That changes it because now you have company establishment in the jurisdiction where the company is registered. Mind and management happens in Cook Islands in that situation. So you can get away with that in those certain situations. But that's not normally what people were doing with offshore companies in the past. Okay. So but for digital nomads, using an offshore holding company very often makes a lot of sense because it can help them stay out of the tax trap of the countries where they spend time but are not necessarily tax resident.
Which is a place where I've holidayed and seem to love. I've got friends with homes there. It seems to be a hub for digital nomads at the moment. I know
huge hub.
I know it's cheap to live once you're there, but are there any other sort of tax benefits for being in that area?
Bali? No, not really. I mean, Bali's part of Indonesia, but it kind of has its own special situation, so to speak, as part of Indonesia. Mm-hmm. But no, not really. The vast majority of digital nomads that live in Bali, they are just kind of living under the radar. Depends on the nature of what type of visa you have in Bali or in Indonesia. Depends on what kind of visa you have for being there. There are certain types of visas where you're not there like working, but then technically you're not allowed to work. And usually, even if you're working for yourself, sitting in your Airbnb apartment, that's technically considered working. So it's a gray area thing. So that's what I mean by they're like living under the radar, but that's common.
Okay. So,
but it depends on how much time you're in Bali, by the way.
Right. Okay.
There is the point. To be honest, I mean, I'd have to look up my resource. I don't know what the definition is in Indonesia for tax residency. I mean, there's no way I can memorize all this stuff. So I have a resource. I look it up when I'm on a consulting call. But if we pulled it up, I could tell you what the definition is of being a tax resident in Bali. My guess is if you don't have a primary home there, if you don't have any like personal, like real connections, what you call center of vital interest, and you're in the country under a certain number of days per year, you're not going to be considered a tax resident. So that's what a lot of people do in Bali. They go there for 2-3 months out of the year. They rent a house on Airbnb, and they're legally not a tax resident in that situation.
Okay, so let's talk structures just for a little bit then. From what you see, where do business owners go wrong? And we're talking about, still global founders, digital nomads. Let's keep it on that topic.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the very first thing where people go wrong is not validating your concept before spending a whole bunch of money on starting your business. First and foremost, whenever you're going to start a business, always validate your concept. And there's only one way to validate your concept, and that's when people give you money for it. Right, so get a customer.
And I think a lot of plenty of people come to me and they said, "Look, go put an ad online, see how many people you get it.
Yeah,
take the bait, and if they do, talk to them. Just say, hey, look, sorry, we're out of stock or we can't supply it at this stage, but we'll be in touch when we do."
That was a whole chapter. Speaking of the 4-hour work week, that was a whole chapter in the 4-hour work week book for validating ideas. When he was talking about his supplement business, he said, run ads on whatever platform you're running ads and see what your conversion rate is on the ad. You don't even have a product to sell. Run the ad to see what your conversion is. If the conversion looks like it's good enough, go make the product and send all of your customers a message saying, sorry, we're on back order, but we'll deliver your order as soon as we can, and scramble to get it done in 90 days.
Look, I don't remember that part in it, so I'll go back and reread.
Yeah, that was a whole chapter. That was a whole chapter in the book. He talked about validating the idea like that. And that's exactly what he talked about, running ads to see how many people responded. And then people do like this idea. Let's run with it.
Step one, validate your business before wasting all your money.
Yeah. Like too many people go out and like, you know what I really need to do? I need to print off 10,000 business cards. Like, okay, first of all, Nobody trades business cards anymore, so that'd be a waste of money anyway. And second, like this, you're spending money for nothing. But it depends on the business, like if your idea is a SaaS business, sure, maybe run some ads, but it's going to be pretty difficult to validate that idea without having the framework, at least the framework of the website up, because where would they go to look at the product to validate it anyway? So in a situation like that, yeah, you maybe need to come up with a bit of money up front. But on the structure end of it, if we are still kind of on the premise of we're talking to digital nomads that are kind of traveling and living around the world and stuff like that, the biggest mistake most of them make beyond that is staying registered as a person, as a tax resident, and registering your business in your home country. That's probably the biggest mistake I see everyone makes, because let's say, I don't know, you're Spanish, you're a Spanish person, you're from Madrid, and you say, I'm going to be a digital nomad, I'm going to leave Spain, I'm going to go live in Bali for a couple of months, I'm going to go live in Thailand for a couple of months, let's go over to Mexico for a couple of months, hit some of these digital nomad kind of hotspots. Well, typically what happens is they don't know, that they're at a stage where they don't even have enough information to know the right questions to even ask, if that makes sense, right? And so they don't even think maybe I should register my company in the UK, or maybe I should register my company in Estonia, or maybe I should register it in Dubai, or maybe I should register it in Wyoming, or something like that. They don't even know enough to ask those questions yet. And so because they're only doing the thing they know up until that point in their lives, and they say, well, I'm Spanish, so let me just go register my company in Spain, and I don't know what to do about where I should pay tax, so I'll just keep paying tax in Spain. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big mistake they make, and honestly, I don't really know a workaround around fixing that mistake, because you don't even know what you don't know to ask the right questions to begin with. I mean, if you were smart, maybe you'd at least do a little bit of Google searching, or go on Perplexity, or listen to Mitchell's podcasts and listen to stuff like this. But yeah, that's a big mistake they make, because very often, if you look, the vast majority of digital nomad people are people from first world high tax countries. Mm-hmm. And staying registered as an individual and registering your business in your home country just means you're going to pay an enormous amount of tax, which is probably unnecessary.
Okay.
And there's probably a better solution for you anyway.
So at what stage would you recommend in your business, let's just talk profit-wise or revenue, whatever you choose, at what stage does someone, because of course it costs to do all this kind of stuff and speak to your accountant, all that, like when does that barrier make sense in your mind?
The earlier the better, but after you've validated your idea.
Okay. So starting business, like this thing's moving, this thing's going, let's do it.
But let me see if I can make some money at this. And now, okay, I've got a little bit of traction. I got a couple of customers. I'm getting some interest on my ads. My blog post is getting traffic. My YouTube channel is getting traffic, whatever it is. But the earlier the better, because the sooner you get the legal aspect of your business, the legal structure of your business sorted out, the easier it's going to be for you going forward. So like for example, let's say you're from Spain, you've got let's say a SaaS business, okay? SaaS, I'm sure you know, but maybe listeners don't. SaaS is SaaS, software as a service. Yeah, so for anybody not listening, that's what it means. Anybody listening that doesn't know, that's what it means. If they're not listening, guess what? They're not listening. For anybody that doesn't understand, it's a SaaS, software as a service. So let's say you're Spanish, you want to go do this digital nomad thing, you want to leave Spain, and you've got traction, you've got some subscribers to your product. Well, the earlier you get that done, the better, because the infrastructure of your business is going to really matter early on. And I'm talking like your tech stack in a big way. Your tech stack matters in a big way. And if you start as a Spanish registered company and a year later you're like, you know what, this really should be a Delaware LLC, it's going to be a pain in the ass to rebuild all of that from the ground up, because you're a Spanish registered company, meaning you're registered in Spain, Spanish tax ID number, Spanish bank account, Spanish Stripe account, Spanish PayPal account, all of your agreements and contracts are everything with a Spanish company, and you realize that thing is creating problems for you. Let's move this over to Delaware. You got to start from scratch. You got to start from absolute zero. You got to build your entire platform all over again from zero. So the earlier you get that done, the better, the less headache it's going to be. Because as an entrepreneur, and I would bet money, Mitchell, you are exactly like this, just like all of us are, is entrepreneurs are always future thinking. We're thinking the next customer, the next deal, the next event, the next person we're hiring, the next product launch. We're thinking next. We don't think about, you know what I really need to do? I need to sit down and dive into some Excel spreadsheets and do bookkeeping, or I need to make sure I filed my annual report for my company, or I need to make sure my legal structure is right. No entrepreneur thinks about, because that's not fun, that's not cool, it's not sexy, it's not what we care about. We care about that next customer. But the sooner you get the legal aspect and the bookkeeping done and all that stuff, the sooner you get that stuff taken care of from the beginning, when it's small and it's a small business without a lot of complications, you can build from small. But if you get it big enough, it's a real pain in the ass to start from the middle.
Now, I'm sitting here and I'm sort of, my mind's ticking over. I'm a little bit interested about you. Bobby, would you classify yourself as a digital nomad?
I have 3 home bases. I live between 3 countries. In a normal year, I'm probably visiting 10 or 15 different countries. So I guess it depends on your definition of digital nomad. Depends on who you ask. If you go on like the digital nomad Reddit subreddit,
Mm-hmm.
The purists, they don't have a home base anywhere. They're living in Airbnbs or hotels. They don't stay in any one place more than a few weeks. And that would be like the digital nomad purist. I would say I'm not that because I had 3 home bases.
Which
I have
sounds pretty good.
stuff.
I live in multiple countries. Yeah.
Yeah, I have stuff, I have here in Playa is one of my home bases. I have a place in Riga, Latvia. So in Riga, Latvia, I have my car and my motorcycle. I have an apartment there.
Sorry, where is Riga, Latvia?
In Latvia?
Okay, righto. My atlas is ticking over here. Great. Eastern Europe. Okay, righto.
Yeah, so if you're in the Baltics in Eastern Europe, the 3 Baltic countries are Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. So I have my car, my bike sitting in the parking garage. I have a nice apartment there. I keep my stuff there. I usually spend my summers in Latvia, and that's my home base for that part of the year. And I like having my stuff there, but from the digital nomad purist definition, I would say that's probably not what they would call a digital nomad. So you could say I'm a slow mad.
I would say though, there's plenty of entrepreneurs out there that are going, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I wish I could be living in multiple countries throughout the year, follow the summers or follow the winters, or just pick and choose. So for you, what does freedom actually mean to you now?
Just freedom is it's freedom of working and spending time where I want and when I want. If I want to tomorrow, I could go buy a plane ticket when we get off the phone and go to Buenos Aires if I wanted to. There's nothing preventing me from doing that. I don't have any obligations tying me here. It would cost me some money to buy a plane ticket and go rent a hotel or a Airbnb or something like that. But there's nothing prohibiting me to rent. All my companies are run remotely. All my team and all my companies, everyone works from home, or some of us travel. Some of us are digital nomads. But they have the choice if they want to travel or not. Most of them just live from one place and live at home, which is fine. This nomadic lifestyle is not for everyone.
Well, it just shows though that a business, the businesses are global right now. So
yeah,
for you,
depends on the nature of the business.
Yeah.
If I had a chain of restaurants, maybe it'd be a little bit different, But
so when you got into the business that you're in, was that one of the deciding points that because I can tell you, yes, indeed, one of the reasons that I love doing what I do is I can do it from anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long ago did you make that decision, or has it just come naturally that it's allowed you to do that?
So in my 20s, I had a company in the U.S. based in North Carolina. I started when I was 21. I had 2 companies before that failed miserably. But the one I started when I was 21, I had an office. It grew pretty well. I sold it when I was 33 or 34, something like that. And my office, we had people all over the country. We were a service business, doing installations, working with big box retail chains across the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a team of people all over the country. We were covering about 2/3 of the U.S. But I had an office staff of about 20 some odd people, and I had an office there. Mm-hmm. And my office staff used to joke, when I would walk in the door, my receptionist would say, "Hello, sir, how may I help you?" Because I never came to the office. I always worked from home. I had a desk there. I started that company, and then once my dad had retired, he had sold his company. He had a construction company, and he was a trained accountant. Before he was in his company, before I was born, he had a controller and CFO of another large construction company. So his background was accounting and that sort of thing. And so he started his own company, retired, and after I was in my company for a couple of years, I hired him in to be my CFO. And he could not wrap his head around the concept of me not coming to work. He would call me at like 8:30 in the morning and say, "Son, are you ever going to come into the office?" I'm like, "Do you even work anymore?" I'm like, "Dad, I'm sitting here working right now. I've been sitting at my desk since 7 o'clock. I work."
Yeah.
And he goes, "You can't."
Whatever he ever did.
Yeah. And he's like, "But you can't be working. You're not sitting at your desk." I'm like, "Dad, I got a desk at home. You've been to my house. You know I have an office in my house." But he couldn't wrap the head around the concept that you don't work in the office, because his mindset, when I was growing up, he was at the office every morning by 7:30. He had on a suit and tie every single workday of his life. He was the kind of dad that would come home from work at like 5:30, 6 o'clock and go mow the yard still in his suit and tie.
Right.
You know, and I thought that's just ridiculous, but whatever, he still did it. But during that time, I realized, so it's funny you bring that up. Was there a defining moment where I decided on how I wanted to work? Because I've always kind of worked remotely. I mean, I did occasionally go to the office, but like I always kind of worked remotely. But I had a big moment, or a couple of moments, in 2006 and 7, kind of life-changing things that happened to me. And I realized I didn't like what was going on in my life. I didn't like the way I was living. To be honest, I realized I hated my company. I hated my employees. I hated my customers. I just hated everything about it. And I ended up going on a camping trip. I had an RV at the time. I have one now too, but it was an older one. I had a different RV back then, and I went on a camping trip on the beach. For anyone listening that knows it, it was the Outer Banks in North Carolina. If you've ever been to the Outer Banks, it might be the most boring place on earth. There's absolutely nothing to do there. But I chose it intentionally. I took my RV, went to the grocery store, loaded up the food. I went for a week, and it was a reflection week for me to kind of think about, like, what was going on. What did I like? What did I not like? What do I want to do in the future? What do I want the next 10 years to look like? And one of my defining moments was when I decided I hate my business, I hate my customers, I hate my company. I don't want to do this anymore. So I decided to sell it, and I took my handy-dandy journal and decided to journal out what I do like, how I want to live, what my perfect day looks like, how I wanted my life to look, and all that stuff. And one of the things I came up with was actually I drew out this framework, and I realized, you know what a dartboard is, right? You know, like with the bullseye in the middle, and you got the rings around the dartboard that kind of go out.
Yeah, we know dartboard.
What I realized is, for me and most people, probably most of humanity, is that center point on your dartboard. The bullseye is your career.
Okay.
And everything in your life ends up being a ring around that career. And if you think about it, it really very often is true, because your job or your business or whatever, everything else you do in life is kind of has to fit within the framework of that career point. So
some people have to move their families across countries because of work and job. Yeah, I totally agree.
Literally, where you go on vacation, where you eat lunch every day, how long you get to go on vacation, what your hobbies are. Like if you're, you live in Switzerland, you're probably going to be a skier or a snowboarder, right? If you live in, I don't know, the coast of Portugal, you'll probably get into surfing. It depends on where you are, right? So it depends on, everything kind of becomes a ring around that. What I realized is I didn't like that. I didn't like my career being the focal point of my life. I wanted the lifestyle I wanted to live to be the focal point of my life. I wanted my career to be one of my rings, if that makes sense. And so, like, during this reflection week I came to that realization, and one of the realizations, one of those things was, I really, really, really want to have flexibility in where and when I work. And there was no way to do that with my other company. Yes, I had a little bit of flexibility, like could I go to the office or work from home? But where my home was, I had no flexibility. If I wanted to go to, I want to go visit friends in Portugal, for a couple of weeks, it was like, yeah, I could make it a vacation, but I couldn't do it for an extended period of time.
That probably realization that you had was what has gone mainstream today. That concept that it's even possible, I guess.
Yeah, that hit me, I think it was January 2007 is when I did that camping trip.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, because I had a big event that happened in 2006 and then 7 again, and my camping trip was right after that first big event that happened to me, where I just said, hey, you gotta figure some shit out, man.
So the advice is go to the middle of nowhere, sit down with your journal, and think about how you want to build your life.
Yeah, think about, think about how you want to live your life. What does your perfect day look like? Do you want to wake up and see mountains? Do you want to wake up and see the beach? What kind of weather do you want? What kind of climate do you want? What kind of food do you want to eat? Like, what kind of hobbies do you want to have? And so for me, I have a very short attention span, so I pick 3 countries. That way I can, when I get bored of one, I just move to one of the other ones,
I love it. Hey, but it all starts there. Like, if you do want to, we put the steps in place to make this happen. Okay. Just one question.
And that also, by the way, that also required me to structure my business in a certain way. So just to tag on to that, it required me to structure my business in a certain way that was conducive to the lifestyle I wanted. And I also realized I didn't want my team, I didn't want to do something that, how do I put this? I don't want to force my team to do something I wasn't willing to do. So I didn't want my team to have to be stuck going to an office, but I had the freedom to go to Portugal for a month at a time. So I wanted to structure my company in such a way that they got to work from home too. And so it was intentionally built. Like the way my business is, there might be some advantages for me to have an office somewhere, but I wanted my employees to have the quality of life that they want. I want them to be able to, take a long lunch and go to lunch with their kids. If they don't want to work at all on Thursdays, but they'd rather work Saturday morning, great, do that. I want them to have the freedom and the flexibility to do that because I didn't want to be a hypocrite and say, I get to do it, but you can't. So I built my business in such a way that they can do that too.
Yeah. Oh, look, I agree with that philosophy, and I do the same to team members around the world also. So you mentioned before that you, when you were younger, had some businesses that failed. Knowing what you know now, your life experience, all the rest, business experience, do you think those businesses still would have failed?
Probably, yeah. Because sometimes you just pick the wrong vehicle.
Right. So the business model is very, very important.
Yeah, sometimes you just pick the wrong vehicle. Sometimes, you pick the right vehicle and you have poor execution, then it still fails, right? In my opinion, execution is more important than an idea.
Yeah.
But you still need at least a decent idea with excellent execution. A shitty idea with excellent execution is going to be a very mediocre or terrible business.
It comes back to what we talked about before, which was validate your idea first.
Yeah, exactly. A mediocre idea with excellent execution can be a good business. Like, no doubt, it can be a good business. But, obviously the ideal is an excellent idea with excellent execution. But,
Hey, Bob, it's been really interesting talking to you today. We've learned a bit about what we need to do in terms of structuring if we're a nomad and the rest, but we've also gone into a little bit your own, I guess, mindset shifts and what you've done throughout your business career, which is, I think there's some learnings everywhere to be made. Look, if you're listening and something stirred up in yourself right now, that is a good thing. Awareness comes before change. Look, if you want to learn more about Bobby's work, what he can do, how he can help you, where will the listeners find you?
I was just going to make a joke. I was going to say, and if I stirred up angry feelings and you want to send me death threats, you can send it to Mitchell Wilson at Gmail. ...
Death and taxes is what it's been about today, or death threats and taxes, I should say. So, is there an email address, or is it best just to go to Business Anywhere?
BusinessAnywhere.io is the best place to reach out to us there. You can send us send us an email through the page. If you're interested in doing business with us, you can even schedule calls with our team members and stuff like that on the page. And we have God knows how many blog posts on there, probably over 2,000 at this point. We put out a lot of content. We're also on all the social channels. We have a YouTube channel, Instagram page, Twitter, or X, I guess now, TikTok. I think we even have a Pinterest page.
Hey, well, businessanywhere.io. And as always, if you're a business owner who wants some clarity, a mentor, a business coach, book a session with Coachbirds, myself and my team. So this has been Let's Talk Business. Thank you very much, Bobby.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk small business. I appreciate you tuning in. If you got value, hit subscribe, like, or drop a comment. It spreads the word and might just help another legend get their breakthrough.